The first thing I did when I came back was decide to make my frenemy of 10 years, Chloe, my girl. She yells at me. I kiss her. She avoids me. I pursue her. The entire school would know Chloe was mine, and anyone who touched her would have to deal with me. A chocolate milk every day was the standard, and my arms were her exclusive spot. AC broken? Perfect. My bed would always be warm for her. This time around, I was going to make sure everyone knew. That Chloe, from a single strand of her hair to the very soul of her, belonged to me, Ethan. My name is Ethan, and I was back. A second ago, I remembered the shriek of tires and a blinding flash of red. The next, I was standing in front of my old high school, the sun so bright it made me squint. All around me were students, laughing and messing around on their way to class. Everything was back to how it was 10 years ago, when Chloe and I were still in high school. Back to her, my frenemy of more than a decade, the girl I'd been fighting with since we were kids, Chloe. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, the pain so sharp I couldn't breathe. In my past life, we'd spent years arguing, fighting, and getting on each other's nerves before we finally admitted how we felt. And just as we were about to finally reach for each other, a car crash ended everything. I never even got the chance to tell her, I love you. My thoughts were cut short by a familiar scent. It was faint and sweet, with a hint of vanilla. I whipped my head around, and I saw her, Chloe, standing just a few feet away. She was wearing a knee-length skirt that showed off her calves. The sunlight caught her just right, giving her a soft glow. She looked exactly as I remembered, vibrant and bold, with that fiery spirit that never backed down. Except right now, her brow was furrowed, and she was looking at me like I was a complete idiot. Ethan, are you just going to stand there spacing out in the middle of the entrance? Her voice was sharp, laced with its usual impatience. It was the same as it had always been, but I knew it wasn't. Nothing was the same. I looked at her, and my eyes instantly welled up. An overwhelming, ecstatic wave of relief washed over me. I didn't care about anything else. Ignoring the shocked stares from the other students, I closed the distance between us in a few strides, and I pulled Chloe into a crushing hug. I held on so tightly, it was like I was trying to merge her into my very bones. I was never letting go again. Chloe's body went rigid. She didn't seem to know what was happening. Gasps and whispers erupted from the students around us. Ethan, are you insane? She finally snapped, struggling and pushing against my chest. Let go of me. What are you doing? I buried my face in the crook of her neck, greedily breathing in her scent. There was no smell of blood, just sunshine and her unique vanilla scent. It was Chloe, alive and warm. Tears streamed down my face, soaking the shoulder of her shirt. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Chloe, I'm sorry. I was rambling, just repeating those words over and over. For not protecting her in our last life. For all the stupid, childish things I'd done to make her mad. For all the love and apologies I never got to voice. Chloe's struggling slowly subsided. My tears seemed to have startled her. We'd fought our whole lives. From her stealing my toys to me pulling her hair, always pranking each other, always at each other's throats. She had never seen me cry. I'd never lost control like this. Ethan. Her voice was uncertain, a little panicked. What's wrong? Did someone mess with you? She even lifted a hand, awkwardly patting my back. The clumsy attempt to comfort me made my heart completely melt. I loosened my grip slightly, but kept my hands firmly on her arms. I looked down into her beautiful eyes, which were filled with confusion and suspicion. No one messed with me. I took a deep breath, wiping my face with my sleeve. I just had a really bad nightmare. Chloe blinked, clearly skeptical. A nightmare? You, Ethan, crying over a nightmare. Her tone had its usual mocking edge, but she couldn't hide the concern in her eyes. Yeah, I nodded, looking at her with total seriousness. I dreamed you disappeared, that I couldn't find you. Chloe froze for a second, a flicker of something crossing her face. She looked away, the tips of her ears turning pink. What are you talking about? Are you trying to jinx me? Let go, we're going to be late for class. She yanked her arm away and turned, heading for the main building. Her pace was hurried, like she was trying to escape. I watched her go, a smile spreading across my face. This was good, just being able to see her like this. To bicker with her. This time, I would never let her go. I hurried to catch up, falling into step beside her. She shot me a glare. Stay away from me. Nope, I said simply. It's a wide hallway. I can walk where I want. You. Chloe sputtered, speeding up. I sped up too. She slowed down, I slowed down. I stayed right next to her, shoulder to shoulder. The other students' eyes kept darting between us, full of curiosity and gossip. After all, everyone in school knew that Ethan and Chloe of senior homeroom were total frenemies, like oil and water. My stunt this morning was probably going to be the talk of the school by lunch. Ethan, are you on something? Chloe asked in a low, seething voice. Nope, I said, glancing at her. The sun caught her long eyelashes, casting tiny shadows. Medicine's gross. I don't like it, do you? My completely random answer left Chloe speechless. She stared at me like I was a lunatic for a few seconds before deciding it wasn't worth talking to me. Whatever, I'm done with you. She huffed and walked into the classroom. I followed right behind her. Our teacher had assigned us seats one behind the other. She was in front, I was behind. Once I sat down, I could see her straight back and the way her ponytail swayed when she wrote. In my past life, I was always pulling some stupid prank on her from back here, like putting a thumbtack on her chair or poking her in the back with my pen. It never failed to get a reaction out of her. I'd either get a death glare over her shoulder or a playful punch in the arm after class. But now, I took a new strawberry cream lollipop, her favorite kind, out of my bag. Before the teacher got there, I gently tapped her on the back. Chloe's body tensed up, and she spun around impatiently. Ethan, what do you want now? I held the lollipop out to her. It's for you. Chloe stared at it, stunned. She looked from the lollipop to my face, her eyes growing even more suspicious. What's this? Is it poisoned? I gave a helpless smile. It's an apology for freaking you out this morning. She eyed me and the lollipop, still suspicious. She was probably trying to figure out what new kind of prank this was. What's your game? She asked, not taking it. I just want to be nicer to you, I said, looking her in the eye, my voice calm and serious. Is that okay? A blush spread across Chloe's cheeks. She snatched the lollipop from my hand and quickly turned away. All I could see was the back of her head, but I knew she was flustered. I could see the tips of her ears were bright red, and she didn't throw it away, either. She slipped it into her desk. The bell rang for class to start, but I couldn't take my eyes off her. My mind kept flashing back to moments from my past life. Not just the tragic end, but also the quiet, sweet moments that were just between us. Like last night, or rather, the last night of my past life. Our parents were both out at a reunion, so no one was home. She'd shown up at my door, hugging a pillow and pretending she got lost. She said the AC in her room was broken and it was too hot to sleep. I knew she was lying, because I had the remote to her AC in my pocket. I'd hidden it earlier, but I didn't call her out on it. I let her in. That night, we lay side by side on my bed, an invisible line drawn right down the middle. At first, we both warned each other not to cross it. But later, after she fell asleep, she rolled right over to my side. Her arms and legs tangled with mine. The scent of her hair, that sweet vanilla smell, filled my senses. I froze, not daring to move a muscle. I could feel the warmth of her body and her steady breathing. In that moment, my heart felt impossibly soft. I thought about how great it would be if we could just stay like that forever. All those years of childish fighting and one-upmanship seemed so meaningless in the face of life and death. The constant arguments I thought would last forever could be silenced so easily by fate. Ethan, the math teacher's exasperated voice cut through from the front of the room. Why don't you answer this problem for us? I snapped out of it and shot to my feet. All eyes in the classroom were on me, including Chloe, who turned slightly, a smirk playing on her lips, ready to watch me fail. I glanced at the problem on the board. It was a functions problem, and for someone who'd already been through college applications and calculus, it was easy. I smoothly laid out the steps and gave the final answer. The math teacher pushed his glasses up, his annoyance replaced by surprise. Well, that's correct. Sit down and try to pay attention. I sat down. Chloe glanced back at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. I just smiled at her. She immediately whipped her head back around, her posture even more rigid than before. The bell finally rang. Chloe shot up from her seat and hurried out of the classroom like she was escaping something. I knew she was heading to the school store for a drink. It was her routine. I followed her. I kept a short distance behind her. When she noticed me, she started walking faster. So I walked faster. I caught up to her on the tree-lined path to the store and fell into step beside her. Chloe, I said. What? She snapped, staring straight ahead. Let's call a truce, I said. Chloe stopped dead in her tracks and stared at me like I had grown a second head. Ethan, you are acting really weird today, she said, looking me up and down. Did I knock your head too hard when we were fighting over your favorite hoodie yesterday? I had to suppress a laugh at the mention of yesterday. We'd gotten into a massive fight in her living room over me getting my dinosaur print hoodie back. It had been pretty epic. The way she'd looked then, all fierce and determined, was a sharp contrast to the wary, confused girl in front of me now. Maybe, I said, playing along. So you have to take responsibility. Responsibility for what? She asked, her eyes wide. For being nicer to me, I said, stepping closer and lowering my voice. For example, from now on, I'm the only one who gets to steal your favorite hoodie. You can't steal mine. The way I said it sounded a little suggestive. Chloe's face instantly turned bright red. She was so flustered she raised a hand to hit me. Ethan, you're shameless. I easily caught her wrist. Her wrist was thin, her skin soft and warm. The second I touched her, she tried to pull away like she'd been burned. But I held on tight. Let go, she hissed, glaring at me. A few other students were starting to stare and whisper, looking at her flushed cheeks and darting eyes. A crazy, possessive urge to claim her as mine surged through me. I remembered the feeling of her body growing cold in my arms. I remembered the soul-crushing panic I felt when I woke up this time. I couldn't lose her again, no matter what it took. I had to keep her by my side. I tightened my grip, pulling her a little closer. Ignoring her struggles and the stares, I leaned in close to her ear and whispered, so only she could hear. Listen to me, Chloe. From now on, you're mine. Every stupid little thing is mine to have. I'm the only one who gets to steal your blanket. And if you have a nightmare, my room is the only one you're allowed to sneak into. Got it. My words seemed to physically burn her. She ripped her hand away and stumbled back a few steps. Her face was as red as a tomato. Ethan, what the hell are you talking about? Her voice was trembling with panic, her eyes darting everywhere, but at me. Who says I'm yours? And who wants to sneak into your room? You're unbelievable. With that, she practically fled, running toward the school store. She ran like something was chasing her. I watched her go and let out a low chuckle. My heart was pounding. Those words had just tumbled out of me. They were fueled by the lingering fear for my second chance and a fierce, possessive need to keep what I'd gotten back. I knew it was too soon to say all that. It would scare her off, but I didn't regret it. This life, I was going to make my intentions perfectly clear. The stares from the other students were now even more intense. I ignored their curious looks and casually followed her. When I got to the store, I saw her pressing a cold bottle of water to her flushed cheeks. As soon as she saw me, she put the bottle down and pretended to be looking at the snacks on the shelves. The tips of her ears were still bright red. I walked over and picked up the bottle she'd just put down. Hey, I was going to buy that, she protested immediately. I know, I said, giving the bottle a little shake. I'm getting it for you. Then I grabbed a strawberry yogurt drink, per usual, from the cooler. I went to the counter and paid for both. Chloe followed behind me, looking a little stunned. Outside the store, I handed her the yogurt. She hesitated for a second before taking it. Thanks, she mumbled. Her voice was barely a whisper. You're welcome, I said, twisting the cap off my water and taking a drink. The cold water soothed the frantic energy inside me. We walked back toward the main building side by side. The silence between us was a little strange. It wasn't like before, when we'd either be arguing or pointedly ignoring each other. This new quiet felt like something was brewing just under the surface. That nightmare you had this morning, she started, her voice soft. Was it really that bad? I glanced over at her. She was looking down at her shoes, her long lashes casting shadows on her cheeks. Yeah, I answered, my voice heavy. It was terrifying. So terrifying that my chest still ached just thinking about it. What happened to me in the dream? She asked, looking up at me with curiosity. The sunlight filtered through the trees, dappling her face in light. I looked at her, so full of life, and swallowed the words I wanted to say. I couldn't tell her I dreamed she died in my arms. It would completely freak her out. I dreamed that you. I paused, trying to find a lighter way to put it. Gained so much weight I couldn't pick you up anymore. Chloe stared at me for a second, then stomped her foot in anger. Ethan, go to hell. She raised her yogurt as if she was going to throw it at me. I laughed and dodged out of the way. I'm kidding. My smile faded, and I looked at her seriously. The truth is, I dreamed I lost you, and I couldn't find you anywhere. Chloe slowly lowered her hand. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. She seemed to be searching my face for any sign that I was joking, but I wasn't. My expression was serious, maybe even with a hint of a sadness she'd never seen in me before. She bit her lip and turned away. Idiot. I'm not a kid. I'm not going to get lost. Her tone was still sharp, but the edge was gone. Yeah, I said softly. So I'll have to keep a closer eye on you from now on. Chloe didn't say anything else, but her fingers tightened around the yogurt bottle, and a faint blush crept up the back of her neck. During our afternoon classes, the tension between us seemed to have eased considerably. She didn't immediately whip around to glare at me if I accidentally bumped her chair. When I asked to borrow an eraser, she just passed it back without a word. She still wasn't talking to me, but even that small change was enough to make our classmates stare. The final bell rang. Everyone started packing up their bags. I packed my bag slowly, my eyes fixed on Chloe. Our families lived right across the hall from each other. We'd always walked to and from school together, our whole lives. Even if we usually walked on opposite sides of the street, or spent the whole time insulting each other. But today, I wanted to walk with her. Chloe finished packing, stood up, and glanced back at me, still taking my time. Her lips parted like she was about to say something. But in the end, she said nothing, just turned and walked out of the classroom alone. I immediately zipped my bag and went after her. I kept a little distance, not too close, not too far. She seemed to sense me, because her pace kept changing, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. She'd even stop suddenly to pretend to tie her shoe, or look at a poster on the wall. I'd just stop a few feet behind her and wait patiently. The setting sun stretched our shadows long behind us. Her ponytail swayed gently as she walked. The hem of her skirt fluttered in the breeze. The whole scene was as perfect as a painting. When we got to our apartment building, she finally snapped. She spun around, glaring at me with her cheeks puffed out. "Ethan, why are you following me?" I walked up to her, putting on my most innocent expression. "I'm going home. It's not like you own the sidewalk." "Then you go first," she said, pointing ahead. "Nope," I refused. "I like walking behind you. That way, I can watch you. Make sure you're always in my sight." Chloe was left speechless. She shot me one last glare before turning and storming into the building. I followed behind, listening to the sound of her stomping up the stairs. At her apartment door, she quickly fumbled for her keys and unlocked it. It was like she thought I'd follow her inside if she wasn't fast enough. Just before the door closed, I stuck my hand out to stop it. "What?" she asked, looking at me nervously like a startled rabbit. I pulled a small box out of my bag, a tiramisu from that bakery she loves. I held it out to her. "For you." She stared at the elegant little box, stunned. "What is this for?" "An apology," I said, having my excuse ready. "For freaking you out this morning, and for calling you fat this afternoon." Chloe's expression softened slightly. She looked at the tiramisu, then back at me. I could see the struggle in her eyes. In the end, the temptation of dessert won out over her suspicion. She quickly took the box, muttering, "I guess you have a conscience after all." Then she slammed the door in my face. I stood in the hallway, looking at her closed door, and smiled. It felt so good to be able to do things for her, to give her all the best things in the world. It felt really good. I went back to my own apartment, which was empty. My parents were working late and wouldn't be back for a while. I dropped my bag and walked out onto the balcony. Chloe's room was directly across from mine. Her curtains weren't fully closed, and I could see her sitting at her desk. It looked like she was opening the tiramisu. Watching her, my heart felt incredibly soft. At the same time, a powerful longing washed over me. I wanted to be closer to her. I wanted to feel that she was real. I wanted to hear her voice. I went back to my room, grabbed my phone, and opened my iMessage chat with the contact I had saved as Chloe the Terrible. In my past life, our later text history was just a string of insults and arguments. The very last message, from right before the accident, was me asking her to hang out that weekend. She'd replied, "We'll see," followed by a smug-looking emoji. I deleted the obnoxious contact name. I typed in a new one, "My Chloe." Seeing her name like that filled me with an indescribable sense of satisfaction. I typed out a message, "How's the tiramisu?" About a minute later, she replied. It was a single word, "Fine." Even through the screen, I could picture her, chin tilted up, trying to act cool. I couldn't help but smile. I sent another message. "What do you want for breakfast tomorrow? I'll grab it for you." This time, her reply was instant. "Don't." It was followed by an angry face emoji. I kept typing. "Pancakes? Or maybe one of those breakfast burritos from that place by the school you said was good." She replied with a single, annoyed message. "Ethan, what is your deal?" What was my deal? I wanted to make up for everything I failed to give you in our last life. I wanted you to get so used to me being good to you that you couldn't live without it. So you could never leave me. But I couldn't say that. I wrote back, "Just want to be nice to you. Is that a problem?" She didn't reply. For a long time, there was nothing. I walked to the window and looked across at her apartment. The light in her room was still on, but she wasn't at her desk anymore. After a few moments, my phone buzzed. She'd replied, "Whatever." It still had the angry emoji after it. But I smiled. I knew it was her own stubborn way of giving in. "Okay, I'll see you downstairs at 7 tomorrow morning." I sent the message, my heart filled with anticipation for the morning, the first day of my new life. Even though I'd scared her at first, overall, I'd say it was a pretty good start. At least she was starting to accept me getting closer, accepting my gestures. It wasn't like before, when she'd eye anything I gave her with suspicion and ask if it was poisoned or part of some elaborate prank. That night, I lay in bed. The final moments of my past life replayed over and over in my head. The blinding red, her body growing cold. A sharp pain twisted in my chest. I shot up in bed, gasping for air. Cold sweat drenched my hair. The fear of losing her clung to me, a deep, gnawing terror. I grabbed my phone and pulled up her contact. After a moment's hesitation, I hit dial. It rang a few times before she answered. Her sleepy, mumbled voice came through the speaker. Hello, Ethan? It's late, what's up? Hearing her voice was enough to calm my racing heart. Nothing, I said, my voice a little hoarse. I just wanted to hear your voice. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then I heard the sound of her shifting, like she was sitting up. Her voice was clearer now, tinged with annoyance. And, was that a hint of concern? Did you have another nightmare? Yeah, I admitted quietly. It wasn't a lie this time. Chloe sighed on the other end of the line. Ethan, why are you being so dramatic tonight? She sounded annoyed, but she didn't hang up. Maybe, I said. So, can you talk with me for a little bit? No, I'm tired, she refused instantly. But I could hear her rustling around, getting comfortable, not sounding like she was about to hang up. Just for 5 minutes, I said, my voice soft and pleading. I knew she was a sucker for this kind of thing. Sure enough, she was quiet for a few seconds. Then, she reluctantly agreed. 5 minutes, max. Then I'm hanging up. Okay. I leaned back against my headboard, just listening to the sound of her soft breathing. It was like the shattered landscape inside me was slowly being pieced back together. We didn't really talk about anything. Mostly we were just quiet. I'd occasionally ask if she was asleep yet, and she'd snap back, almost. But even that simple, boring call, it made me feel a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a lifetime. After 5 minutes, I was the one to speak up. Time's up. You should sleep. Chloe seemed surprised. Oh, okay. I'm hanging up then. Okay. Good night, Chloe. I used her name in a way I never got the chance to in my past life. The other end of the line went completely silent. After a few seconds, I heard her practically sputtering. Don't call me that. Then she slammed the phone down. Listening to the dial tone, I couldn't help but smile. Being able to tease her like this, to hear her voice so full of life. It was so good. I slept better that night than I had in ages. No nightmares. Just the thought of tomorrow. The next morning, I was up early. I got ready and went out to the diner by our building to get breakfast. A breakfast burrito, her favorite soy milk, and a carton of strawberry milk. I was downstairs right at 7 o'clock. A few minutes later, the main door opened, and Chloe walked out, her backpack slung over her shoulder. She'd tied her ponytail higher than usual today, which made her look even more vibrant. She stopped when she saw the breakfast in my hands. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. You actually bought it? She asked quietly. I promised, didn't I? I said, handing her the bag. Eat it while it's warm. She took the bag and peeked inside. It was everything I'd mentioned yesterday, all her favorites. She looked up at me, her expression complicated. Ethan, what is it? I asked. She shook her head and looked down. Nothing. Let's go. We walked toward school, side by side. The morning sun was warm and gentle. The sidewalks were filled with people heading to work and other students on their way to school. This time, we weren't walking one in front of the other. We were walking together. She took small bites of her burrito while I held her drink. Every so often, a classmate we knew would walk by, their face a mask of shock at seeing us together. Chloe's face flushed, and she started eating a little faster. Slow down, you're going to choke, I said, handing her the drink. She took it, had a sip, and snuck a glance at me. Ethan, you've been acting so weird the last couple of days. Weird how? It's just, you're like a different person, she said, frowning as she tried to find the right words. You used to just annoy me and steal my stuff. Now, all I want is to be good to you, to give you the entire world. Now what? I asked, feigning ignorance. She shot me a glare and turned away. Now you're even more annoying. With that, she sped up and walked ahead of me. But I could see the corner of her mouth twitch into a tiny smile, like a cat that got the cream. It was so cute it made my heart ache. I hurried to catch up. I watched the way her ponytail bounced as she walked. I watched the sunlight on her perfect profile. My heart was filled to the brim with a feeling of pure contentment. This was why I came back. To protect her. To make sure she always stayed this vibrant and bright. My Chloe. In this life, you can only be mine. When we got to the familiar alley near the school, Chloe suddenly stopped and stuffed her empty food container and cup into the trash bag I was holding. The blush on her cheeks hadn't completely faded yet. You go on ahead. Her tone was stiff, almost like an order. I was confused for a second, and then I got it. She was worried that if we walked into class together, it would cause even more gossip. My hug yesterday had probably already sent the entire grade into a frenzy. Showing up together today would just add fuel to the fire. She was easily embarrassed. I looked at the tips of her ears, which were turning red again, and felt a wave of both amusement and affection. Okay, I nodded, not calling her out. What about you? I'm, going to the school store to get something, she said, her eyes darting away. Okay, I said, trying not to laugh. I'll see you in class. I took the trash and headed into the building by myself. I could feel her eyes on my back the whole time. Her gaze didn't leave me until I turned the corner into the main hall. When I got back to the classroom, I was, as expected, met with a flurry of knowing looks and whispers. Ethan, my man. A hug yesterday. Bringing her breakfast today? My desk mate, Josh, nudged me with his elbow, wiggling his eyebrows. Things are moving fast. I just smiled, not confirming or denying anything. I threw out the trash and sat down. My eyes landed on the empty seat in front of me. I felt a pang of emptiness. We'd only been apart for a few minutes, but I already missed her. This kind of clingy feeling was something my past self could never have imagined. Back then, all I thought about was the fun of fighting with her. Now I knew that just being able to think about her, to worry about her, was its own kind of happiness. Just before the bell for homeroom rang, Chloe slipped in through the back door. She kept her head down, walking quickly to her desk. Her back was ramrod straight, as if she was trying her best to ignore all the stares. First period was English. The classroom was filled with the drone of students reading aloud. I looked at her back and suddenly remembered something from my past life. In the spring of our senior year, she'd bombed an English practice test because she had a really bad cold. The English teacher called her out in front of the whole class, and her eyes got red, but she was too stubborn to cry. After school that day, she went to the field behind the school to cry by herself. I was the one who found her, and at the time, I'd made fun of her, calling her a crybaby. It made her so mad, she chased me for 2 blocks trying to hit me. Thinking about it now, I was such an idiot. I'd wanted to comfort her, but I went about it in the worst possible way. Just then, the English teacher walked in holding a stack of papers. Okay, class, settle down. The classroom immediately went quiet. I have the results from last week's practice test. Overall, there was some improvement, but a few of you. The teacher's eyes swept across the room. My heart clenched. I remembered. This was it. Chloe had stayed up all night reading a novel, so she'd been exhausted during the test and messed up a huge chunk of the reading comprehension section. And sure enough, the teacher started reading out the scores. Chloe, a C-. For Chloe, who was usually a solid B student, that score was a disaster. I saw her shoulders slump just a little. The teacher paused when he got to her desk to hand back her test. Chloe, what happened here? You missed half the reading comprehension. Were you up all night reading novels again? The teacher's voice was full of disappointment. Chloe kept her head down, her fingers clenched around the edge of her test paper. I could see the back of her neck turning red. It wasn't from shyness, it was from humiliation. A few quiet whispers started up around the room. I knew how awful she must feel. She was proud, especially when it came to her grades. I could just picture her biting her lip, trying not to look upset. My heart ached for her. Just as the teacher was about to walk away, I raised my hand. Sir. The entire class, including Chloe, turned to look at me in surprise. The English teacher looked at me, confused. Ethan, what is it? I stood up and said calmly. Sir, a few of us were talking, and we thought some of the questions on the reading comprehension section were a little ambiguous. We felt like there could have been more than one right answer. It was a half-truth. The questions were tricky, but they weren't actually ambiguous. The teacher paused, pushing up his glasses. Oh, which questions were those? Explain. I walked to the front of the class, picked up a piece of chalk, and wrote the numbers of the questions Chloe had gotten wrong. Then I started breaking down the questions, pointing out where the wording was confusing. My English grade was always one of my best, and I usually aced the reading comprehension sections. So, as I explained, the teacher nodded along. You make a good point, Ethan. These questions aren't as clear as they could be. The teacher's expression softened, and he looked over at Chloe. In that case, Chloe, your mistakes on these questions are understandable. Just be more careful next time to eliminate the tricky answer choices. Chloe looked up, her expression shifting from miserable to confused as she looked from the teacher to me. Her eyes were filled with surprise and a flicker of what looked like gratitude. I went back to my seat and gave her a quick wink. She immediately looked down, but I saw the tension leave her shoulders, and the corner of her mouth twitched into a tiny smile. The bell for the end of class rang. The second the teacher was out the door, Chloe turned around in her seat. She put my English textbook on my desk. Her voice was still a little stiff, but her eyes were much softer. Hey, thanks for that. No problem, I said. It was nothing. She bit her lip, then asked quietly, how did you know which ones I got wrong? I smiled and pointed to my eyes. I've got good eyesight. I saw when he was handing them back. It was a total lie, of course. I remembered it because I remembered how upset she'd been, and I remembered exactly which questions she'd missed. Chloe seemed to buy it. She just said, oh, and didn't press it. But the way she looked at me after that was different. During the mid-morning break, the whole school was gathered out on the field. The sun was pretty intense, enough to make you dizzy. I was standing a little behind Chloe, so I had a clear view of her. She looked a little sick. Her face was pale, and her movements were sluggish. I remembered then that she had low blood sugar and couldn't be out in the sun for too long. In the past, I would have definitely made fun of her for being so delicate. But now, when we broke for free time, I quickly walked over to her. I pulled a strawberry hard candy out of my pocket and pressed it into her hand. Here. Chloe looked at the candy in her palm, surprised. What now? You don't look so good, I said, gesturing to her face. You're a little pale. She touched her cheek, her eyes darting away. I'm fine. She didn't even finish the sentence before she swayed on her feet. I instinctively reached out and grabbed her arm to steady her. Still fine, I asked, my voice sharp with worry. Is it your blood sugar? She leaned against my arm, breathing a little heavily, a fine sheen of sweat on her forehead. This time, she didn't immediately push me away. She probably didn't have the strength. A little, she admitted quietly, unwrapping the candy and popping it in her mouth. The sweet and sour strawberry flavor filled her mouth, and a little color returned to her cheeks. I helped her over to the shade of a tree at the edge of the field. Just rest here for a minute. Don't move. She looked down, the candy in her cheek, and mumbled an okay. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her slightly flushed face. Her long eyelashes cast soft shadows beneath her eyes. When she was quiet like this, she lost some of her usual sharp edges and seemed softer. I found myself staring. Ethan, she said suddenly, looking up at me. Why are you suddenly being so nice to me? Her expression was serious, searching, and a little confused. She'd probably been wanting to ask that for a while. Ever since that random hug yesterday. To me defending her in class, to this right now. It was all so different from how we'd been for the past decade. I looked into her clear eyes, and there was so much I wanted to say. I wanted to tell her it was because I'd already lost her once. I wanted to tell her I regretted how I treated her. I wanted to tell her that I'd realized I'd been in love with her for a long time. But now wasn't the time. It would just scare her away. I just smiled and gently tucked a stray, sweat-dampened strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture felt so natural, like I'd done it 1,000 times before. Chloe's body went completely still. Her eyes widened, like a startled deer. A blush crept up her neck. Because, I said, my voice low, I suddenly realized that after giving you a hard time for 10 years, I kind of feel bad about it. So I want to make up for it. It was a plausible enough excuse. Chloe blinked, the blush on her cheeks deepening. She ducked her head, her voice a barely audible whisper. Who asked you to make it up to me? But there was no real anger in her voice. In fact, it sounded almost shy. My heart felt like it had been brushed by a feather, light and soft. The whistle blew, signaling the end of the break. Students started heading back to class. Chloe stood up, stretching her arms and legs. I'm feeling better. Let's go. We walked back to the main building together. This time, she didn't try to keep her distance. The sun was still hot, but a cool breeze rustled through the trees. It stirred the ends of her hair, and it stirred my heart. The last period of the day was study hall. The classroom was quiet except for the scratching of pens on paper. I was working on a math problem when a small, wadded-up piece of paper flew from ahead of me and landed perfectly on my notebook. I froze for a second, then looked up. Chloe's back was perfectly straight, as if nothing had happened, but I could see the tips of her ears were red. I smiled to myself as I carefully unfolded the note. Her neat handwriting was on it, a little rushed, like she'd been nervous when she wrote it. My parents aren't home tonight, and I think my AC is broken again. She'd drawn a little sad face at the end. My heart leaped. I looked up at her. She was still looking down, pretending to be doing her work, but her knuckles were white where she was gripping her pen. She was nervous. She was waiting for my reply. I thought back to that night in my past life, the one where she'd gotten lost and ended up in my room. My heart started to beat faster. I grabbed my pen and quickly scribbled a reply on the back. I crumpled it up and, when no one was looking, gently tossed it back onto her desk. She flinched slightly. After a moment, she casually picked it up and unfolded it under her desk. I saw her shoulders tremble slightly. Then she clutched the note tightly in her hand and ducked her head even lower. Her ears were so red they looked like they were on fire. What I had written on the note was, "Okay, my door is always open for you." The final bell felt like a starting gun. Chloe started packing her bag almost instantly, her movements quick and flustered. She kept her head down, not daring to look at me, but I could see how red her ears were and the slight tremor in her hands. She was nervous, because of the note, because of tonight. My heart felt full to bursting with an indescribable excitement. I started to pack my own bag slowly, but I kept her in the corner of my eye the whole time. She zipped her bag, stood up, and practically fled the classroom. She barely mumbled a reply to a girl who said bye to her, not even breaking her stride. I watched her disappear out the door and let out a low chuckle. My Chloe. She was so cute when she was shy. I finished packing my bag at a leisurely pace, said bye to Josh, and left the classroom. By the time I got to the school gate, Chloe was already gone. I knew she must have run home ahead of me. I wasn't in a hurry. I walked home slowly. The setting sun painted the sky in warm shades of orange. A cool breeze, smelling of early summer, brushed against my face. I was in a great mood. So good that even the crooked old tree on the corner looked beautiful. The best part of this second chance was just being able to see her, to be near her, to be a part of her life. All the little everyday things I used to take for granted now felt priceless. When I got to our building, I looked up at her window. The curtains were drawn. I wondered what she was doing. I wondered if her heart was pounding as fast as mine was. I got home and dropped my bag. My parents weren't home, just as I'd expected. A note on the table said they had a dinner thing and that I was on my own for food. I wasn't very hungry. I just grabbed some bread from the fridge. Then I started to pace. Every few minutes I'd walk out to the balcony and look across at her apartment. Her curtains were still drawn tight, not a sliver of light showing through. Was she even home? What was she doing? What if she wasn't coming? I pushed the thought out of my mind. No, she'd said her AC was broken. She would come. Time crawled by. I took a shower and changed into some comfortable clothes. I tidied up my room a little. I put away all the messy papers and textbooks on my desk. I even straightened my sheets. After all that, I looked around my reasonably clean room and felt a little calmer. I sat at my desk and picked up a physics textbook, but I couldn't focus on a single word. My ears were strained, listening for any sound from outside my door. The sky outside grew dark. The streetlights in the complex came on, casting a dim, yellow glow through my window. The room was silent except for the sound of my own heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Each beat felt like a countdown. Finally, a little after 8, I heard the faintest sound of footsteps outside my door. They grew closer, then stopped right outside. My heart leaped into my throat. My fingers tightened around my pen. She was here. There were a few seconds of silence. Then, a soft, hesitant knock. Knock, knock, knock. It was so quiet, like she was afraid of disturbing someone. I took a deep breath to calm my pounding heart, stood up, and walked to the door. I put my hand on the knob, paused for a second, then slowly opened it. The door swung open, and there was Chloe, standing in the hallway, clutching a pillow with little flowers on it. She was wearing a pair of light pink pajamas, her hair pulled back loosely, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She smelled fresh from the shower, a clean scent mixed with her usual hint of vanilla. Her face was still flushed, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. She looked like a lost little animal, timid and uncertain. She started, her voice small and a little strained. My AC, I think it's broken again. It was the exact same excuse as last time. Even the way she was holding her pillow was identical. My heart completely melted. Broken again? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as I stepped aside. Come on in. She hesitated for a second, then ducked her head and hurried past me into my room. Her footsteps were as light as a cat's. I closed the door and turned around. She was standing by my bed, looking at me, a little lost. Her eyes were filled with nervousness and a hint of a reliance I'd never seen before. She was no stranger to my room. We'd grown up doing homework, playing video games, and even fighting in this very room. But this was probably the first time she'd ever been here at night, in her pajamas, holding a pillow. The atmosphere in the room was undeniably charged. It's really hot, she said, as if she needed to reinforce her excuse, fanning her face with her hand. I watched her flushed cheeks and the way her eyelashes fluttered nervously, and my heart did a little flip. Yeah, I know, I said, walking over and opening the window a little wider to let in the night air. You can sit down, I said, gesturing to my bed. She hesitated, then sat down on the edge of the bed, still clutching her pillow. Her posture was stiff. I pulled my desk chair over and sat down across from her. We were only a few feet apart. I could clearly smell her scent. Silence stretched between us. It was a little awkward, but it was also filled with a nervous, electric energy. So what were you doing? She asked, making small talk, her eyes landing on my desk. Homework, I said, pointing to the open physics textbook. Oh, she said, and then fell silent again. She started unconsciously picking at the floral pattern on her pillow. In the lamplight, the curve of her cheek was soft, her neck long and pale. She looked like a delicate porcelain doll. I could almost hear my own heart pounding in my chest. So, she said suddenly, looking up as if she'd made a decision. Where am I sleeping? She looked like she was marching to her doom, as if I was going to do something to her, not just offer her a place to sleep. I couldn't resist teasing her a little. Where do you want to sleep? I asked, a small smile playing on my lips. Her face instantly turned beet red. Obviously, you're sleeping on the floor. I get the bed, she said immediately, clutching her pillow like a shield. It was the exact same conversation we'd had in our past life. Watching her, so obviously flustered but trying so hard to act tough, made my heart melt. Okay, I agreed easily. You take the bed, I'll take the floor. She seemed surprised that I agreed so quickly. Was that a flicker of disappointment in her eyes? It was gone in an instant, but I saw it. I smiled to myself. She never said what she really meant. I got up and pulled a spare blanket and pillow from my closet and started making a bed for myself on the floor. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her pillow, and watched me. Her eyes followed my every move. Ethan, she said softly. Yeah, I answered, still making the bed. Are you really okay? She asked, her voice full of genuine concern. You've just been acting so weird. I paused what I was doing. I looked up at her. She was watching me seriously, her brow furrowed. The lamplight reflected in her eyes. Weird how? I asked. You're being too nice to me, she said, her voice getting quieter. It's so nice that I'm not used to it. My heart gave a painful squeeze. It was a bittersweet feeling, full of a deep tenderness for her. To think that me just being nice to her was enough to make her feel unsettled. What a complete jerk I must have been in my past life. I put down the pillow I was holding, walked over to her, and crouched down. From this angle, I had to look up to meet her eyes. My sudden closeness startled her, and she instinctively shrank back. Her eyes were wide with alarm and confusion. Chloe, I said, my voice serious as I looked into her eyes. Is it supposed to be normal for me to be mean to you? She stared at me, stunned. She blinked, like she didn't understand what I was saying. The way I used to be, stealing your stuff, fighting with you, making you mad, I said slowly. That's what was wrong. Right now, this is how it should be. So you don't have to feel weird about it. From now on, I'm always going to be like this. Even better. I said each word slowly and clearly. It felt like I was making a solemn vow. Chloe stared at me, her expression blank. Her eyes were wide, my reflection captured in them. Her cheeks grew redder, and her breathing seemed to quicken. After a few seconds, she seemed to snap out of it. She whipped her head around, avoiding my eyes. Who asked you to be nice to me all the time? Her voice was a trembling whisper, but she couldn't stop the small smile from forming on her lips. Like a kid who'd just snuck a piece of candy. She was so cute I wanted to kiss her right then and there. I fought back the urge and stood up. Okay, the bed's made. Are you ready to sleep? She nodded, still not looking at me. Then, turn off the light. Okay. I walked to the door and turned off the overhead light. I left on the small, dim lamp on my desk, which cast a warm, soft glow. The room was instantly much darker. The atmosphere became more intimate, more private. I could hear the soft rustle of her climbing into bed and pulling up the covers. It sounded like a little animal making a nest. I lay down on my makeshift bed on the floor. From just a few feet away, I could feel the warmth radiating from her, could smell her scent. Neither of us said anything. The only sound in the room was our soft breathing. Outside, I could hear the faint chirping of crickets. The cool night air drifted in through the window, but it couldn't dispel the warmth in the room. I lay with my eyes open, staring at the blurry shapes the lamplight made on the ceiling. I wasn't sleepy at all. My heart was beating fast. I knew she wasn't asleep either. Her breathing was too unsteady. Ethan, she whispered in the dark. Yeah, are you asleep? No, I can't sleep either. I turned on my side to face the bed. In the dark, I could just make out the blurry outline of her under the covers. What's wrong? Can't get used to the bed. I asked. A little, she mumbled. We were quiet for a moment. Then she said, even more quietly, it's also a little cold. Cold. I froze. It was early summer, and she was under a blanket. My heart skipped a beat. I knew what she was doing. She was making an excuse. She was giving me an opening. A rush of heat went through me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. So, should I come up there? The question made my own heart skip a beat. The shape on the bed went still. After a few seconds, I heard her reply, a tiny whisper. Whatever. Those two words were all the invitation I needed. I scrambled up from the floor, moving so fast I was clumsy. I lifted the corner of her blanket and slid in beside her. It wasn't a big bed. The space between us disappeared instantly. We were so close I could feel the heat from her body. So close I could smell the clean scent of her hair and that vanilla smell that always made my heart race. Her body was tense, completely still. She was barely breathing. I could feel how nervous she was. So was I? My arm brushed against hers. The second our skin touched, we both flinched as if we'd been zapped by static electricity. Don't get so close, she said, her voice trembling as she tried to inch away. It's a small bed, I said, but her shy reaction made my heart feel warm. She didn't say anything else, but she didn't move any further away. We just lay there, side by side, with a tiny bit of space between us. Like two sardines packed in a can. The silence returned. But this time it wasn't awkward. It was thick with a sweet, heavy tension. It felt like the air around us had turned to honey. I don't know how much time passed. I felt her shift beside me. She'd turned over to face me. I could feel her looking at me. It was an intense, searching look. "Ethan," she whispered. "Yeah, what you said yesterday, were you serious?" "About what?" "You know," she said, her voice getting quieter. "The part where you said I was yours." My heart hammered in my chest. She'd remembered. In the dark, I turned to meet her eyes, which seemed to shimmer in the faint light. I said without hesitation, my voice low and firm. I heard her take a sharp breath. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling almost too faintly to hear. "Why am I yours?" I looked at her blurry outline in the dark, 1,000 words I wanted to say caught in my throat. "Because I lost you in our last life. Because I could never let you go in this one. Because I've been in love with you for longer than I can remember." But I couldn't say any of that yet. I reached out in the dark and found her hand. I took it gently in mine. Her hand was small and soft and a little cold. She flinched when I took it, but she didn't pull away. "There is no why," I said, squeezing her hand, feeling the softness of her palm. "You're just mine. You have been for a long time, and you always will be." My voice was firm, possessive, but underneath it was all the tenderness I felt for her. Chloe didn't say anything, but I could feel her hand relax in mine. Then, she gently squeezed my hand back. Her fingers were cool, but they sent a jolt right through me. And we just lay there in the dark, holding hands. Neither of us said another word. The silent intimacy that flowed between us was more powerful than any words. I don't know how long we lay there before I heard her breathing even out. Her grip on my hand loosened. She was asleep. I gently turned on my side, and in the faint moonlight from the window, I watched her sleep. Her long eyelashes cast soft shadows on her cheeks. Her lips were parted slightly, like a child's. My heart was filled with a sense of peace and happiness I couldn't describe. This was everything I wanted to protect. I carefully leaned in and pressed a feather-like kiss to her forehead. "Good night, my Chloe." This time, she didn't tell me not to call her that. She just shifted in her sleep, unconsciously moving closer to me. And the corner of her mouth was curved into a sweet, small smile. The morning sun slipped playfully through a gap in the curtains. I woke up to the feeling of something warm and soft. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was Chloe's face, inches from mine. At some point in the night, she had rolled over and was now clinging to me like a koala. Her head was resting on my arm. One of her legs was thrown over my waist, and her arms were wrapped tightly around my neck. Her warm breath, smelling of vanilla, puffed against my neck with each even exhale. It tickled, like a feather brushing against my skin. My heart instantly melted. I didn't dare move, afraid I would wake her. I just lay there, watching her. The sunlight danced across her face, highlighting the soft curve of her cheek. Her skin was pale and smooth, almost flawless. Her lips were a natural, soft pink, like flower petals. I couldn't help but hold my breath. The moment was so perfect I almost thought I was still dreaming. It was the most real, the warmest moment I'd had since I came back. I carefully lifted my free hand and gently brushed a stray piece of hair from her cheek. My touch was as gentle as if I were handling a priceless treasure. She must have felt it, because she shifted in her sleep, nuzzling against my shoulder and tightening her arms around my neck. She made a soft, sleepy sound, like a contented kitten. A smile spread across my face. My heart was filled to the brim with a feeling I could only describe as happiness. I wished I could wake up like this every morning. After a while, her long lashes fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. Her beautiful eyes were still hazy with sleep, which made them even more captivating. She blinked, not quite awake yet. Then her eyes met mine, and I was smiling. Her expression went from sleepy to confused to focused. And when she realized the position we were in, tangled up together, her eyes flew wide open. Her expression went from shock to pure, mortified embarrassment. "Ah!" She let out a little shriek and scrambled away from me like a startled rabbit, pulling away and rolling to the far side of the bed. She wrapped the blanket tightly around herself, leaving only her wide, panicked eyes showing. "Ethan, why are you in this bed?" Her voice was muffled by the blanket, but her mortification was crystal clear. I slowly sat up, shaking out my arm, which had gone numb from her sleeping on it. I looked at her with an innocent expression. "Someone said she was cold last night and invited me up. Did you forget?" She stiffened under the blanket. Her eyes darted back and forth as she tried to remember what had happened. A deep blush spread across her face. "Well, you still can't," she stammered, not looking at me. "You can't be that close." I couldn't help but laugh. "I think you were the one who rolled over here," I teased. And you were the one holding on to me. You're lying, she shot back, her voice high with indignation. I did not. No. I raised an eyebrow, gesturing to my still tingling arm. Then how did my arm end up as your pillow? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to come up with a comeback. Her face and neck were bright red, like a cooked lobster. She shot me an embarrassed, angry glare, then pulled the blanket completely over her head. Stop talking, came her muffled protest from under the covers. I looked at the big lump on the bed and laughed. How could she be so cute? Okay, I'll stop teasing you, I said, getting up and opening the curtains. Bright sunlight flooded the room. Come on, get up, or we'll be late for school. The lump under the blanket shifted. You go out first, came her muffled voice. I knew she was embarrassed and needed a minute. Okay, I'll go make breakfast, I said, heading for the door. Come out when you're ready. I closed the door and leaned against it, listening to the sounds of her getting dressed. I couldn't help but touch my neck. I could still feel the warmth of her breath there. My heart felt like it was full of honey. By the time I had some toast and milk ready, Chloe finally emerged from my room. She'd changed into her school clothes, her hair pulled back into its usual neat ponytail. But her cheeks were still flushed, and she wouldn't look me in the eye. Hurry and eat. We don't have much time, I said, pushing a glass of milk toward her. She kept her head down, taking tiny, ladle-like bites of her toast and sips of her milk. She was a completely different person from her usual loud, vibrant self. She was unnaturally quiet. She said suddenly, glancing up at me for a split second before looking down again. I'm not a very neat sleeper. Her voice was a tiny whisper. Yeah, I noticed, I said, trying not to smile as I nodded seriously. Her face got even redder. I'm not usually like that, she mumbled. I just wasn't used to the bed. Right, I get it, I said, still nodding, a smile I couldn't contain spreading across my face. She seemed to notice I was smiling and shot me an annoyed, embarrassed glare. Don't smile. Okay, not smiling, I said, trying to wipe the smile off my face, but I knew it was still in my eyes. She looked down, her cheeks puffed out, and took a vicious bite of her toast, as if she were biting me. But the atmosphere wasn't awkward anymore. It was filled with a sweet, unspoken understanding. We left for school together. As we walked through the complex, she still kept a little distance between us, but she wasn't actively avoiding me like she had been. The sun cast our two shadows on the pavement, side by side. Hey, she said suddenly, her voice a little awkward. Did I say anything weird last night? I glanced at her. She was looking at me nervously, twisting the strap of her backpack. Weird things, I asked, pretending to think. Like what? You know, sleep talking, she said, her voice getting quieter. She looked so nervous, I couldn't resist messing with her. I think so, I said, drawing out the words. Her eyes widened, her whole body tensing. What did I say? I stopped walking and turned to face her. I leaned in close to her. I watched her pupils dilate, and I lowered my voice, saying each word slowly. You said, Ethan, I like you the most. Chloe's face exploded in a blush. It was like she'd caught on fire. You're lying. I did not, she said, her voice high with indignation as she raised her hand to hit me. I laughed and dodged out of the way. I'm kidding. You didn't say anything. She froze for a second, then got even angrier and started chasing me. Ethan, you jerk. You're messing with me again. We chased each other through the complex, just like we used to when we were kids. Her laughter was bright and clear, her face flushed from either anger or embarrassment. I couldn't tell which. The sun was shining, and everything felt perfect. In that moment, it was like I could see all the ordinary, happy mornings we should have had in our past life. When we got close to the school, she finally stopped chasing me and straightened her hair and clothes. She tried to put on her usual, don't mess with me face, but the red tips of her ears and the slight smile on her lips gave her away. Don't wait for me after school, she said, about to slip inside ahead of me like she had the day before. But I grabbed her wrist. Wait. She looked back at me, confused. I pulled a carton of strawberry milk, which I'd warmed up that morning, out of my bag and pushed it into her hand. Drink it during break, I said, my voice casual. For energy. She looked at the milk, then back at me, her expression unreadable. Ethan, you. What about me? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She bit her lip like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just mumbled, nothing. Then she pulled her hand away and hurried through the school gates, her head down. This time, she didn't call me annoying. I watched her go, then followed, a happy feeling spreading through me. I knew she was slowly getting used to me being nice to her, getting used to me being close, getting used to me being possessive. It was like boiling a frog in lukewarm water. I was going to let her slowly sink into the warm, gentle net I was weaving for her, until she could never escape. During homeroom, I saw her sneak a look at the note I'd given her, the one that said, "My door is always open for you." She pulled it carefully out of her pencil case. Then she quickly stuffed it back in, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. Her cheeks were a little pink. I was in an incredibly good mood. Even when Josh came over to gossip, asking, "So, how's it going, man?" I saw Chloe's neck was all red yesterday. I didn't push him away like I normally would have. I just gave him a mysterious smile. Getting there, Josh's eyes went wide, and he gave me a thumbs up. Nice. During the break, I saw Chloe take out the strawberry milk, stick a straw in it, and take small sips. There was a tiny, almost unnoticeable smile on her face. The sun shone on her, and she looked impossibly beautiful. A few guys from another class walked by our classroom, and their eyes were immediately drawn to her. They started whispering to each other. My expression immediately turned cold. A fierce wave of possessiveness washed over me. My Chloe, how dare any other guy look at her like that? I stood up, walked over to her desk, and leaned against it casually. I blocked most of their view of her. She looked up at me, confused. "What are you doing?" I leaned down close to her and said, in a voice only she could hear, "Is the milk good?" My sudden closeness made her uncomfortable. She leaned back a little and nodded. "Yeah, I'll bring you a different flavor next time," I said with a smile, then reached out and very naturally brushed a piece of her hair out of her face, even though it wasn't messy. The gesture was so intimate, it was like I'd done it 1,000 times. Every eye in the classroom was suddenly on us. Chloe's face turned bright red, like a ripe apple. She slapped my hand away, her voice a low, embarrassed hiss. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I didn't care. I straightened up and shot a look at the guys at the door, who were staring with their mouths open. My look was a clear warning, a clear claim. The guys saw my look, and they quickly shuffled away. Satisfied, I looked back at Chloe and smiled. "Nothing. Your hair was just a little messy." Then, ignoring her flushed face and the knowing catcalls from our classmates, I calmly walked back to my seat. I knew it was childish, like a dog marking its territory, but I couldn't help it. After coming back, my possessiveness over her was stronger than it had ever been. She was mine, from head to toe, inside and out. She could only be mine. No one else could even look at her. Chloe ignored me for the rest of the morning, but I knew she wasn't really mad, because when she went to the bathroom during break, I overheard her complaining to her friend. "That guy Ethan is getting more and more ridiculous." But there wasn't any real anger in her voice. In fact, was that a hint of sweetness? Her friend just laughed. "Oh, come on, you love it. Ethan is like the most popular guy in school right now, and he's totally obsessed with you. You should be thrilled." Chloe just huffed and didn't argue. I sat behind them, my head down, trying to hide the huge smile spreading across my face. "Yeah, Chloe, you should be thrilled. Because in this life, I'm never letting you go." The final bell rang. Chloe packed her bag quickly, not even glancing at me as she headed for the door. But I could tell she wasn't in as much of a hurry as she had been. She was even walking a little slowly, like she was waiting for someone. I quickly packed my bag, said bye to Josh, and hurried after her. When I got to the school gate, sure enough, she was standing under a tree nearby, pretending to look at her phone. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her in light. She looked like a perfect picture. I walked over to her, waiting for me. She jumped, startled, and quickly put her phone away, her face hardening. "Who's waiting for you?" "I was just texting someone back." "Oh," I said, not calling her out. "Want to walk home together?" She glanced at me, then turned and started walking home without a word. Her pace was steady. I smiled and fell into step beside her. The setting sun stretched our shadows long, so they intertwined on the pavement, like they would never be separated. "Chloe," I said softly. "What?" she snapped, but she slowed her pace a little. "Tonight," I started, watching her profile tense up. "Is your AC fixed yet?" The back of her neck turned a deep red. Her fingers clenched into a fist. After a few seconds of silence, I heard her mumble, her voice resigned. "I don't think so." Her vague, "I don't think so," sent ripples through my heart. A smile spread across my face. "Oh," I said, trying to keep the joy out of my voice. "Looks like you'll have to stay with me again tonight then." Chloe shot me a quick glance, her cheeks as red as the setting sun. She didn't say anything, just looked down at her feet, but she fell into step with me. We walked home side by side. The setting sun cast a warm, golden glow over everything. The air was filled with the lazy, sweet smell of an early summer evening. Every so often, a classmate would pass by and give us a knowing smile. Chloe's face got even redder, and she tried to hide it in her collar. But I met their gazes head on, and even leaned a little closer to her. Our arms would brush against each other every so often. Every time we touched, I could feel her flinch slightly, could feel her heart speed up. She was like a startled deer, but she didn't pull away. Her shy, Hesitant reactions made my heart beat faster than any bold move could have. "Stay away from me," she finally mumbled, taking a small step away. "Narrow sidewalk," I said, easily closing the distance again. She shot me an angry glare, but there was nothing she could do. She just had to let me stick to her like glue. I stopped at the convenience store at the entrance to our complex. "Wait here a second." She looked at me, confused. "Why?" "Just need to grab something," I said with a smile, then went inside. I carefully looked over the shelves. I ended up grabbing a few bags of her favorite strawberry gummies and a couple of different yogurt drinks. When I was paying, I saw a little bear-shaped chocolate by the register and grabbed that too. When I came out, she looked curiously at the bag in my hand. "Why'd you buy so much junk food?" I handed her the bag. "It's for you." She froze for a second, then took the bag and looked inside, her eyes wide. "More stuff for me? What do you think I am, a pig?" "Yeah," I nodded, unable to resist pinching her puffed-out cheek. "My pig." Her skin was soft and warm, like fresh dough. She slapped my hand away like she'd been burned, covering her face, her eyes wide. "Ethan, if you touch me again, I'm not coming to your room." It was meant to be a threat, but with her red face and weak voice, it sounded more like a pout. I immediately put my hands up in surrender. Okay, I won't." But her words, "not coming to your room," sent a little thrill through me. She was already subconsciously thinking of my room as a place she could go, a place she might even be looking forward to. It was a good sign. I got home to an empty apartment. The note from my parents said they were going to a wedding reception and would be home late. It was like the universe was conspiring to help our little sleepovers. Chloe stood in the middle of the living room, clutching the bag of snacks, looking a little awkward. "I'm just going to go drop my bag off at my place." "Okay," I nodded. "You'll come back?" Her ears turned red again, and she mumbled a yeah before darting back across the hall like a scared rabbit. I looked at the closed door and laughed. I went back to my room and straightened out the blankets on the floor. Even though I knew she'd probably end up being cold again, I had to keep up appearances. Then I sat at my desk, pretending to read, my heart racing with anticipation for her knock. The minutes ticked by. There was no sound from across the hall. Was she really not coming? The thought made me antsy. Had I been too pushy this afternoon and scared her off? Or did she regret it? I was just about to give in and go knock on her door, when I finally heard a soft, hesitant knock. Knock, knock, knock. My heart settled back into my chest. I shot up from my chair, hurried to the door, took a deep breath, and then calmly opened it. Chloe was standing outside. This time she wasn't holding a pillow. She'd changed into a pair of light blue pajamas, and her hair was still damp from the shower, smelling fresh and clean. She'd clearly just showered. Her face was flushed, and she was still clutching the bag of snacks I'd given her, her eyes darting away from mine. I think I left a hair tie here yesterday," she said, coming up with a terrible excuse. I looked at her bare wrists and loose hair and had to suppress a smile. I didn't call her out. "Oh, okay. Come in and look for it," I said, stepping aside. She kept her head down and hurried into the room, pretending to look for the non-existent hair tie on my desk and nightstand. Her movements were stiff, her acting terrible. I watched, thoroughly amused. "Maybe it fell under the bed," she said, crouching down and pretending to look. I walked up behind her and looked down at the delicate curve of her waist as she crouched, the way her collar gaped slightly to reveal her collarbone. My throat went dry. "If you can't find it, just forget it," I said, my voice a little hoarse. She stood up and turned around, almost walking right into me. She jumped, startled, and took a step back, bumping into the edge of the bed. "Why are you standing so close?" she asked nervously, her chest rising and falling quickly. I took a step forward, closing the small distance between us. I looked down at her. In the lamplight, her wide, dark eyes were shining with a panicked, helpless light. Her cheeks were flushed, her lips slightly parted in a silent invitation. "Chloe," I said, my voice low. "What?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Your AC," I said, leaning in closer, my eyes fixed on her trembling eyelashes. "Is it really broken again?" She tensed up, her eyes darting around even more frantically. "Yeah," she whispered, her head bowed. "What a coincidence," I said, raising an eyebrow, a teasing note in my voice. "It only seems to break when your parents are out, huh?" Her face instantly flushed a deep crimson, the color spreading down her neck. "It just is broken," she insisted, looking up and glaring at me, trying to hide her embarrassment behind anger. "If you don't want me to stay, just say it." Seeing her like this, caught in a lie but still trying to act tough, made my heart completely melt. "I do," I answered without a second's hesitation, my eyes locked on hers. "I want you to stay. Every day." My tone was so serious, so direct, that it left her momentarily stunned. The embarrassed anger in her eyes slowly gave way to something more complicated. There was surprise, confusion, and maybe even a tiny, hidden flicker of happiness. We were so close. So close I could feel her breath on my face. So close I could see my own reflection in her eyes. The air between us felt thick, heavy with a sweet tension. I looked at her lips, just inches away, pink and glistening like they were begging to be kissed. A powerful urge washed over me. I had to kiss her. I had to know this was real. I had to mark her as mine. My throat tightened as I slowly leaned down. Chloe seemed to realize what I was about to do. Her eyes flew open, her body went rigid, and her hands came up to press against my chest. But she didn't push. She just trembled slightly, and then she closed her eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered like a butterfly's wings, betraying her nervousness and her anticipation. Just as my lips were about to touch hers, the sound of the front door opening and my parents' voices suddenly echoed from the living room. Huh? Did Ethan go to bed already? I think his light is still on. We both froze. Chloe's eyes shot open and she shoved me away, the color draining from her face as panic took over. Your parents are home, she hissed, her voice a panicked whisper. The intimate spell was broken. I cursed silently. Of all the times for them to come home. Quick, hide, she whispered frantically, her eyes darting around the room before landing on my closet. Hide from what? I said, grabbing her arm, amused. It's not like we were doing anything wrong. But, she said, her eyes starting to look red with panic. If your parents see me in your room like this, they'll get the wrong idea. Seeing the genuine tears welling in her eyes, I gave in. Okay, go hide in the bathroom. I'll go talk to them and draw them away. She nodded quickly and slipped into the attached bathroom like a scared deer, quietly closing the door behind her. I took a deep breath, smoothed out my clothes, tried to calm my racing heart, and opened my bedroom door. Hey Mom, hey Dad, you're back. My parents were taking off their shoes and looked up, surprised to see me. You're still up, Ethan? Yeah, I was just reading, I said, trying to sound casual. Did you guys eat? We did. The food at the reception was great, my mom said, smiling as she looked me over. You seem to be in a good mood tonight. My heart clenched, but I kept my face neutral. Do I? Maybe it's because I finally figured out that physics problem. My dad clapped me on the shoulder. Don't work too hard. Make sure you get some rest. We're going to get ready for bed. You should too. I watched them head toward their bathroom and breathed a sigh of relief. I quickly slipped back into my room, locking the door behind me. I walked to the bathroom door and knocked softly. Chloe, it's okay. They went to their room. The door opened a crack. Chloe peeked out, her face still pale with fright. Are they really gone? Yeah, I nodded. We're safe for now. She cautiously stepped out, patting her chest and letting out a long sigh of relief. That scared me to death. I had to bite back a laugh at her guilty expression. Was that really necessary? We weren't doing anything. She shot me a glare, her cheeks flushing. Still, the interruption had pretty much killed the romantic mood. But the lingering thrill of our almost kiss still hung in the air. It's getting late. We should sleep, I said, gesturing to the bed and my spot on the floor. Same arrangement? She looked at the bed, then at my makeshift bed on the floor, and bit her lip as if steeling herself. In the soft light, her profile looked determined, like she'd come to a brave decision. She started quietly, nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. Is it cold on the floor? My heart leaped. Looking at her nervous eyes and the blush creeping up her neck, I knew exactly what she was suggesting. She was worried about me. She was giving me another opening. I fought to hide my elation, pretending to consider it. Yeah, it's a little cold, I said, my voice soft. So, should I come up there again tonight? Her face turned an even deeper shade of red, like a ripe tomato. She looked down, silent for a few seconds. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost couldn't hear it, she whispered, yeah. It felt like a feather landing softly on my heart, spreading endless waves of happiness. Watching her, so shy she looked like she wanted to shrink into herself, made my heart melt. My Chloe. She was slowly letting down her guard for me. Coming closer. That was enough. Okay, I heard myself say, my voice full of warmth and affection. I'm turning off the light. Okay. I turned off the main light, leaving just the dim desk lamp on. Then, as she watched with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation, I slipped under the covers beside her. This time, we were even closer than the night before. So close I could feel the warmth of her body against mine. So close I could hear her heart pounding like a drum. She was still a little stiff, lying perfectly still. But I could tell she wasn't as nervous as she had been the night before. In fact, she was slowly, almost imperceptibly, inching closer to me, little by little, until her arm was pressed gently against mine. Where our skin touched, a little fire seemed to spark, warm and tingly. I didn't move. I just savored the quiet intimacy of her moving closer. In the darkness, her breathing slowly evened out. Her unique vanilla and soap scent filled my senses. It was more calming than any sleeping pill. Ethan, she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. Yeah, from now on, she started, her voice barely a whisper. Can you only be nice to me? Her words were like pure sugar, dissolving straight into my heart. It was so her, a perfect mix of bossy and sweet. I turned on my side and found her hand in the dark, squeezing it tight. Of course, I answered without hesitation, my voice as serious as a vow. I'll only ever be good to you. Chloe, you're my only exception, my only favorite. I felt her hand squeeze mine in return. Then, as if she could finally relax, she snuggled closer, finding a comfortable spot. Her breathing deepened into the slow, steady rhythm of sleep. She was asleep, and on her lips, there was the hint of a contented smile. I held her hand, feeling the warmth of her body and the rhythm of her breathing. My heart was filled with a sense of peace and happiness I had never known before. I knew the net I'd been weaving was slowly tightening, and the little rabbit caught inside didn't seem to want to escape. In fact, she seemed to be enjoying it. That was perfect. My Chloe, this life, you're not getting away. The next morning, I was woken by a slight stirring next to me. I opened my eyes to find Chloe already awake, trying to carefully untangle herself from my arms. Apparently, we'd ended up wrapped around each other again in our sleep. This time, she was the one clinging to me like an octopus, her head buried in my chest, sleeping soundly. Now she was carefully trying to lift her leg off my waist, attempting to escape without waking me. The sunlight peeking through the curtains danced on her flushed cheeks. Her eyelashes fluttered with the guilt of someone caught in the act. I had to suppress a laugh. I deliberately tightened my arms, pulling her closer. Where do you think you're going? I asked, my voice hoarse with sleep. She froze, then looked up to meet my smiling eyes. Her face instantly turned the color of a ripe peach. You were awake this whole time, she hissed, hitting my chest with a soft, ineffective punch that felt more like a tickle. Just woke up, I said, completely shameless, as I leaned down to breathe in the clean scent of her hair. What were you up to, being all sneaky? I was not being sneaky, she said, struggling to get out of my arms. When she realized it was useless, she just glared at me, her cheeks puffed out. Let go of me, it's time to get up, just a little longer, I murmured, resting my chin on the top of her head, refusing to let go. Having her warm and soft in my arms was too good to give up. She struggled for a moment before giving up, burying her face in my chest. Ethan, you're getting way too bold, she mumbled. But there was no real anger in her voice, just a kind of resigned indulgence. My heart felt like it had been tickled by a kitten's paw. I admitted, idly twisting a strand of her hair around my finger. Only with you. She shivered slightly in my arms, but didn't say anything else. In the quiet, sun-drenched morning, we lay wrapped in each other's arms, listening to the sound of our own heartbeats. The atmosphere was intoxicatingly sweet. It wasn't until we heard my mom moving around in the kitchen that Chloe shot out of my arms like a startled cat. Oh no, your mom's up, she whispered, scrambling out of bed and trying to smooth out her wrinkled pajamas, her face a mask of panic. I have to get back. I found her panic incredibly amusing. What are you so scared of? We didn't do anything, I said, sitting up slowly, enjoying her rare moment of flustered chaos. Still, she hissed, shooting me a glare before creeping to the door and cracking it open to peek outside. She looked like a little spy on a secret mission. I couldn't help but laugh. Go on, get out of here, I said, coming up behind her and giving her a gentle push. I'll see you downstairs. She glanced back at me, her cheeks still pink, but her eyes held a new, natural intimacy that hadn't been there before. Okay, she whispered, then disappeared out my door and into her own apartment across the hall like a flash. I looked at the closed door, a smile lingering on my face. The thrill of our little secret made our budding relationship feel even more special and sweet. After getting ready and eating the breakfast my mom made, I grabbed my bag and headed out. As soon as I got downstairs, I saw Chloe already waiting for me. She'd changed into her school uniform, her ponytail perfectly neat, her face set in its usual cool, aloof expression. But the faint blush on the tips of her ears and the way her eyes darted away when she saw me gave her away. You're early today, I said, walking up to her and reaching for her backpack out of habit. But she pulled it away, her eyes wary. I can carry it myself. Okay, I said, dropping my hand, and we started walking to school side by side. The morning air was crisp and smelled of dew and freshly cut grass. We walked in silence for a bit. She seemed to still be embarrassed about the morning because she kept her head down. Hey, I said, bumping her arm with mine. What? She snapped, but she didn't pull away. Next time your AC breaks, I said, my voice serious. You can just come over. You don't need an excuse. She stopped walking and looked up at me, her cheeks flushing. Who said I wanted to go to your room all the time? You're so full of yourself. With that, she sped up and walked ahead of me, her whole posture radiating embarrassed anger. I watched her go and whistled happily. I knew that even though she said no, she didn't really mean it. By the time we got to school, the rumors about me and Chloe had clearly reached a new level. From me fixing her hair in front of everyone yesterday to us showing up at school together this morning, it had all but confirmed that we were dating. When we walked into the classroom, we were met with a barrage of knowing, curious, and even envious looks. Chloe was clearly not used to being the center of attention. She kept her head down, hurried to her seat, and immediately buried her nose in a book, her back ramrod straight. I, on the other hand, didn't mind at all. I took the stairs in stride and even cheerfully greeted a few of my friends. Josh leaned over, wiggling his eyebrows. So it's official? You guys are really together? I just smiled, not confirming or denying anything. I just clapped him on the shoulder. Just focus on your studies, man. Josh scoffed, clearly annoyed with my non-answer, but he didn't press it. In math class that morning, the teacher was explaining a complicated geometry proof. Chloe didn't seem to be getting it. Her brow was furrowed, and she was just doodling on her scratch paper. From my seat behind her, I could see her fidgeting anxiously. When the teacher turned to write on the board, I tore off a piece of paper, quickly scribbled down a simpler way to solve the proof, balled it up, and tossed it perfectly onto her desk. She jumped, shot me a glare, then discreetly unfolded the note. After she read it, her eyes lit up. She nodded thoughtfully and started working out the problem on her own paper. A moment later, a look of understanding dawned on her face, and her shoulders relaxed. She glanced back at me, gave me a quick wink, and a small smile played on her lips. It was like our own secret code. The small interaction made my heart soar. Our little secrets, the things only we knew, were more thrilling than any public display of affection. During the break, her friend Leah finally couldn't take it anymore and pulled Chloe aside to gossip. Chloe, what is going on with you and Ethan? The whole class is saying you're together. Chloe's face immediately flushed, and she wouldn't meet Leah's eyes. Don't be ridiculous. That's not true. Oh, please, Leah said, not buying it for a second. She pointed to the strawberry milk I'd given her that morning. He brings you this every day, and you're telling me nothing's going on. He just does that on his own. Chloe insisted, but her ears were bright red. Oh, on his own, huh? Leah said, her voice teasing. So how come he doesn't bring me anything on his own? Chloe was left speechless. She gave Leah a playful punch, her face flushed. If you don't shut up, I'm not talking to you anymore. I sat behind them, listening to their hushed conversation, watching Chloe's red face and her attempt to look calm, and my heart felt like it was full of honey. My Chloe was so cute, even when she was trying to deny it. At lunch in the cafeteria, I naturally brought my tray over to her table and sat down across from her. She was eating with Leah and a few other girls. When they saw me, they all exchanged knowing smiles. Chloe's face flushed again, and she kicked me lightly under the table, giving me a look that clearly said, "Go away." I pretended not to understand and calmly put the chicken from my plate onto hers. "Eat up, you're too skinny." The move earned a collective, suppressed squeal from the other girls at the table, their looks even more knowing than before. Chloe looked at the extra chicken on her plate, her face turning so red it looked like it was about to steam. "I have my own," she said, trying to give it back. But I stopped her, my voice firm. "I gave it to you. Eat it." She paused, looked at my serious expression, bit her lip, and finally mumbled a "thank you" before starting to eat it in small bites. Her ears were bright red. Leah watched from the side, clicking her tongue. "Wow, you guys are so disgustingly cute. I think I'm gonna be sick." The other girls laughed in agreement. Chloe ducked her head even lower, practically hiding her face in her food. But I was in a great mood. Even the cafeteria food tasted amazing. I knew my blatant, public displays of affection would make her shy and flustered, but it would also get her used to it. Used to me being close, used to me taking care of her, used to the idea of me being her boyfriend. After school, we walked home together as usual. As we passed the small garden by the school, I saw a couple secretly holding hands under a big oak tree. An idea sparked in my mind, and I stopped walking. Chloe looked back at me, confused. "What's wrong?" I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, then slowly held out my hand. Palm up, a silent invitation. Her eyes fell to my hand, then back up to my face. A blush slowly spread across her cheeks. Her eyes were filled with hesitation, shyness, and a tiny spark of hope. Other students walking home were starting to stare. Her fingers twitched nervously, and her breathing quickened. I waited patiently, my gaze steady and soft. I knew she was fighting an internal battle, torn between her shyness and what she wanted. It felt like an eternity, but it was only a moment. Finally, as if she'd made up her mind, she took a deep breath and quickly placed her hand in mine. Her fingers were cool and trembling slightly. The moment I closed my hand around hers, she tensed up, then completely relaxed. Her cheeks were as red as the sunset, but she met my eyes, and a shy, sweet smile touched her lips. I tightened my fingers, completely enveloping her small, soft hand in mine. A warmth spread from my palm all the way to my heart. "Let's go," I said, my voice so natural it was like we'd done this 1,000 times before. "Okay," she whispered, letting me lead her. We walked hand in hand through the after-school crowd. The sun stretched our shadows long, so they overlapped on the pavement, inseparable. We got all kinds of looks, from surprised to curious to approving. At first, Chloe was a little uncomfortable and tried to pull her hand away, but I held on tight and didn't let her. Slowly, she seemed to get used to it. She even shifted her fingers slightly, lacing them more comfortably with mine. Our palms were pressed together, sharing warmth. I could feel the slight dampness of her palm, could feel her pulse quicken. It was like our hearts were beating in time, a sweet, silent song. In that moment, we didn't need words. Holding hands said more than words ever could. It was a silent declaration that our relationship had entered a new phase, from hesitant, unspoken feelings to a clear, mutual understanding. The walk home seemed shorter than usual. When we got to our building, I still hadn't let go of her hand, and she didn't pull away. It wasn't until we were standing in front of her door that she finally wiggled her fingers. "Well, I'm home." Her voice was soft, laced with a reluctance to leave. I let go of her hand, and looking at her flushed cheeks and shining eyes, my heart melted. "Okay, see you tomorrow." She nodded and took out her keys. Just before she went inside, she turned back, gave me a quick look, and said, her voice as light as a feather, "Tomorrow, I think I want chocolate milk." Then, before I could even react, she slammed the door shut. I stood in the hallway, looking at my empty hand, which still felt warm from her touch, and let out a low laugh. My Chloe. She was finally starting to ask me for things. It was a huge step. It meant she was really starting to let me into her life, to make me a part of her routine. "Okay," I said softly to the closed door. "Chocolate milk it is." I knew she could hear me on the other side, and I knew she was probably blushing. The next morning, I got up a little early. I went to the coffee shop by our building and bought their new, extra creamy chocolate milk, and I even had them add in some of the strawberry popping pearls she likes. When I got downstairs, Chloe was already waiting. She was wearing a light purple t-shirt today that made her skin look even paler. Her ponytail was high and tight, showing off her smooth forehead and the elegant curve of her neck. Her eyes lit up when she saw the drink in my hand, but she quickly looked away, trying to act casual. But she couldn't hide the small smile playing on her lips. "Here you go," I said, handing it to her with the straw already in. She took it, mumbled a thanks, and took a sip. The rich chocolate flavor filled her mouth, and she closed her eyes in satisfaction, like a happy kitten. "Is it good?" I asked. "MHM," she nodded, taking another sip before asking, "How did you know I wanted the strawberry pearls?" I smiled and gently wiped a little smudge of chocolate from the corner of her mouth. The gesture was natural and intimate. Just a guess. Her face flushed, but she didn't pull away like she used to. She just gave me a playful glare. "Come on, we're going to be late." With that, she turned and started walking toward school, her steps light. I watched her ponytail sway as she walked and happily followed. Naturally, I reached for her hand again. This time, she didn't hesitate. Her slender fingers slipped between mine, and our hands locked together. Our palms were pressed together, warm and solid. We walked hand in hand through the morning streets. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the sidewalk. A gentle breeze carried the faint scent of flowers. Everything was perfect. "Ethan," she said softly. "Yeah, are we?" she started, her voice a little uncertain. "Dating?" I stopped walking and turned to face her. Her cheeks were a soft pink, and her eyes were shining with a mixture of hope and anxiety. I squeezed her hand and looked at her seriously. "What do you think?" I asked, a smile playing on my lips. She bit her lip and looked down. "How should I know?" she mumbled. "You never officially asked." Her voice was tinged with a hint of complaint. That's when it hit me. I'd been so focused on my actions, on staking my claim, that I'd never actually given her a proper title. My Chloe cared about that. She was waiting for me to make it clear. I felt a wave of both amusement and tenderness. I used my other hand to gently tilt her chin up, so she had to look me in the eye. Chloe, I said, my voice serious. She seemed to sense what was coming. She held her breath, her eyes fixed on mine. I am officially informing you, I said, looking into her clear eyes, speaking each word slowly and distinctly, that from this moment on, you are my girlfriend. This is a one-sided declaration. I'm not accepting any arguments. My tone was its usual brand of bossy, but my eyes were so soft she could have drowned in them. Chloe stared at me, her eyes slowly widening until they looked like they were full of stars. A deep blush spread across her cheeks and down her neck. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. But a huge, sweet smile spread across her face, one she couldn't control. Her eyes curved into happy crescents. Who wants to be your girlfriend? She mumbled. But her voice was so soft it had no conviction. You do, I said firmly, my thumb gently stroking her chin. It can only be you. She slapped my hand away, her face red, and looked down, her voice a happy whisper. So bossy. That's me, I admitted proudly, taking her hand again. Let's go, girlfriend. The title made her ears turn red again, but she didn't argue. She just let me lead her. Her steps were so light, she practically floated. That one official declaration seemed to clear away all the uncertainty between us, launching us into a new, brighter, sweeter phase of our relationship. We were still holding hands when we walked into the classroom. This time, Chloe didn't shyly try to pull her hand away. Instead, she lifted her chin a little, a small, proud, and confident smile on her face. It was like she was announcing to the whole world, that's right, we're together. All eyes in the classroom were on us again, but this time with looks of understanding and happiness for us. Josh let out an exaggerated whistle. Well, congratulations, you two. Chloe's face flushed, and she secretly pinched my hand, but she didn't deny the new title. I smiled and accepted my friend's congratulations, then walked her to her seat before going to my own. The rest of the day, the air between us was thick and sweet like honey. During class, I'd find myself staring at the back of her head, and she, as if sensing it, would sometimes glance back, our eyes meeting for a brief, smiling moment before she'd quickly turn away. During breaks, she would naturally turn around to ask me about homework or share her snacks. She drank every last drop of the chocolate milk I brought her. We had gym in the afternoon, and we had to run the half-mile. Chloe had never been very athletic. After the run, she was pale and panting, leaning over with her hands on her knees. I immediately grabbed a water bottle and a towel and went over to her. You okay? I asked, handing her the open water bottle. She took it and drank a few sips before she could catch her breath. I'm fine, she panted. Just tired. I took the towel and gently wiped the sweat from her forehead and neck. Her skin was flushed a healthy pink from the exertion, and it was warm and soft under my touch. The intimate gesture immediately drew whistles and catcalls from the other students. Chloe got embarrassed and gently pushed my hand away. I can do it myself. But I ignored her and carefully finished wiping her face before handing the towel back to her. Don't push yourself so hard next time if you can't do it, I said, my voice a mixture of scolding and concern. She blinked, then leaned in close and whispered, Then will you run with me next time? Her eyes were sparkling with a sly, hopeful light. She looked like a little fox who had just gotten her way. My heart melted. I reached out and ruffled her hair. Okay, I'll run with you. She beamed, then took another satisfied sip of water. Her smile in the sun was so bright it could have chased away any storm. After school, we didn't go straight home. I took her to her favorite dessert shop near the school. To celebrate, I said, ordering her favorite tiramisu and a strawberry milkshake. Celebrate what? She asked, chewing on her straw. To celebrate, I said, my voice soft. Me finally making it official. She froze for a second, then realized what I meant. Her face flushed, and she playfully threatened me with her spoon. Ethan, you're so shameless. I laughed and caught her wrist. I don't need shame when I have you. She was left speechless, half embarrassed and half amused. She ended up just giving me a playful glare, but she couldn't hide the smile on her face. Soft music played in the dessert shop, and the air smelled sweet. We sat at a table by the window, sharing a piece of tiramisu. She ate slowly, savoring each bite with a happy little hum. Is it good? I asked. She nodded enthusiastically, then held out a spoonful to me. You try. The gesture was so natural, so intimate. I looked into her expectant eyes and leaned forward to take the bite from her spoon. The sweet flavor melted on my tongue, mixed with the faint, sweet scent of her. It's good, I said, my eyes never leaving her face. She was sweeter than any dessert. She blushed again and looked down, taking small bites of her own tiramisu, the tips of her ears a cute shade of pink. It was starting to get dark when we left the dessert shop. The streetlights were coming on, and the streets were busy with evening traffic. We walked home slowly, hand in hand. The cool night air was a welcome relief after the heat of the day. "Ethan," she said suddenly, swinging our joined hands. "Yeah, is this," she started, her voice a little worried. "Like, against the rules?" I squeezed her hand, my voice firm. "Nope." "Huh?" she asked, looking up at me, confused. "This," I said, pausing to look into her clear eyes, "is us calling dibs on the rest of our lives. So it's not against the rules. It's self-defense. Self-defense against anyone else trying to steal you away." She stared at me for a second, then her eyes started to get a little red as she understood what I meant. She was touched. She stopped walking and turned to face me. The yellow glow of the streetlights softened the lines of her face and made her eyes shine like stars. "Ethan, yeah, you have to mean it," she said, her voice full of a seriousness and trust I'd never heard before. "If you call dibs, you can't take it back." My heart felt like it had been sucker punched, leaving me feeling weak and overwhelmed with emotion. I lifted my hand and gently cupped her face, my thumb stroking her soft cheek. "Never," I said, leaning down to press my forehead against hers, our breath mingling. "Chloe, you're the only thing I've ever wanted in this life." I'd almost let the truth slip, but I caught myself just in time. But she didn't seem to notice, too caught up in the emotional moment between us. She closed her eyes and leaned into my chest, her arms wrapping around my waist. "Okay," she mumbled into my chest. "I believe you." We stood there, holding each other under the streetlight, like two trees that had grown together. The city was loud and chaotic around us, but in that moment, we were in our own quiet, sweet little world. After a long moment, she finally pulled away, her cheeks flushed. "We should go home." "Okay." We started walking again, still holding hands. As we got close to our building, she suddenly remembered something. "Oh right, my parents are coming home tomorrow," she said, sounding a little disappointed. Which meant no more broken AC excuses to sneak into my room. I looked at her pouting face and couldn't help but smile. "What's wrong? Gonna miss me?" She punched me playfully. "Who's gonna miss you?" "I'm just worried about my AC." "Oh," I said, raising an eyebrow to tease her. "Well, I can come take a look at it tomorrow. Maybe it really is broken." She stared at me for a second, then realized I was teasing her and stomped her foot. "Ethan, you're so annoying." I laughed at her pouty face and pulled her into a hug. "It's okay," I whispered in her ear. "We can find other excuses. Like studying together?" Her ears instantly turned bright red, and she squirmed a little in my arms. "Who wants to study with you?" But her voice had no conviction. I knew she liked the idea. Just like me, she was already looking forward to our next secret date. When we got to her door, I didn't let go of her hand right away. She wasn't in a hurry to go inside, either. We just stood there for a minute, holding hands. "I should probably go in," she said softly, her eyes full of reluctance. "Yeah," I nodded, but I didn't let go of her hand. She looked at me, then suddenly stood on her tiptoes and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. It was as light as a butterfly's wings. The soft, warm touch was there and gone in an instant. But it sent a jolt of electricity through my entire body. I froze. She froze too. Then her entire face flushed a deep red, like it was on fire. "See you tomorrow." She threw the words over her shoulder and disappeared inside like a startled rabbit, the door slamming shut behind her. I stood there, frozen, and touched the spot on my cheek where she'd kissed me. I could still feel the soft warmth of her lips. It felt like a giant firework had gone off in my chest, bright and sweet. My Chloe. She was finally taking the initiative. It was just a quick peck, but it was enough to send my heart soaring. "See you tomorrow, my girlfriend," I said softly to her closed door, a huge smile I couldn't contain spreading across my face. I knew that on the other side of the door, her heart was pounding just as fast as mine, her face just as red. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, I stood downstairs with a warm chocolate milk in my hand, feeling more excited than I ever had before. The memory of her quick, light kiss from the night before replayed over and over in my mind. I could still feel the ghost of her soft, warm lips on my cheek. The main door clicked open, and Chloe walked out. She wore her hair down today, and it fell in soft, natural waves over her shoulders, making her look softer than usual. When she saw me, her eyes darted away, and a blush immediately spread across her cheeks. She hesitated for a second before walking toward me. Clearly, she was still embarrassed about her impulsive kiss last night. I smiled and walked up to her, holding out the milk. "Good morning, my girlfriend." The title made her ears turn bright red. She shot me a quick glance, took the milk, and mumbled, "Good morning." Her voice was soft with embarrassment. We started walking to school side by side. Unlike the day before, She was quiet today, keeping her head down and taking small sips of her milk, not daring to look at me. I deliberately slowed my pace to match hers and leaned in. "What's wrong?" I whispered. "Still embarrassed?" She shot up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on and glared at me. "Who's embarrassed?" Her voice was full of false bravado, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Oh." I raised an eyebrow and deliberately touched my cheek. "Then why does this spot still feel a little warm?" Her eyes instinctively darted to the spot I was touching, the exact spot she had kissed last night. Her face exploded in a blush, turning the color of a ripe tomato. "What are you talking about?" she sputtered, raising her hand as if to cover my mouth. I laughed and dodged, easily catching her wrist. I gave a gentle pull, bringing her closer. "What are you running from?" I asked, looking down at her flushed face, feeling great. "You already kissed me. Are you going to deny it now?" "I did not," she said, so embarrassed she looked like she was about to jump out of her skin. She tried to pull her hand away, but I held on tight. A few early morning joggers and people on their way to work passed by, giving us amused, friendly smiles. She got even more embarrassed. "Ethan, let go of me," she hissed. "People are staring." "Let them stare," I said, not caring at all. I squeezed her hand tighter. I'm allowed to hold my girlfriend's hand. She couldn't get away, and she was both embarrassed and annoyed. Finally, she gave up and let me hold her hand, but she mumbled under her breath, "Shameless." Only with you," I readily admitted. She was left speechless and could only glare at me, her cheeks puffed out, but she couldn't hide the small smile playing on her lips. The sunlight on her playfully annoyed, beautiful face made it impossible to look away. I knew that even though she was complaining, she was secretly pleased. When we got to the school gate, we ran into Josh and a few of the guys from the basketball team. When Josh saw us holding hands, he let out an exaggerated whoop. Well, look what we have here. Showing off your love first thing in the morning, making all us single guys feel bad." The other guys joined in the teasing. "Nice work, Ethan. You sealed the deal fast." "Hey, Chloe." Chloe's face instantly turned beet red, and she instinctively tried to pull her hand away. But I held on tighter, taking my friend's teasing in stride. "Jealous? Then go find your own girlfriend." Josh clutched his chest dramatically. "You've changed, man. Brothers before." "Well, you know." Everyone laughed. Chloe was so embarrassed by all the teasing that she couldn't even look up. She gave my hand a secret squeeze, a clear signal to get out of there. I laughed and said goodbye to my friends, then led her through the school gates. "You need to tone it down in front of them," Chloe mumbled, her face red, once we were in a less crowded area. "Tone what down?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Just, don't let them call me that," she said, her voice getting quieter. "It's embarrassing." "What should they call you then?" I asked, amused by her shyness. "Chloe, my darling." She stared at me for a second, then realized I was teasing her and punched my arm. "Ethan, you're the worst." I couldn't help but laugh at her pouty, helpless expression. My Chloe was so cute, even when she was mad. We were practically inseparable for the rest of the day. We talked between classes, ate lunch together, and walked home together. I'd get her drinks from the vending machine, and she'd help me organize my notes. Every shared glance, every accidental touch, was filled with a sweet, unspoken understanding. The whole class seemed to have accepted us as a couple, and they'd occasionally make harmless jokes. Chloe went from being embarrassed at first to slowly getting used to it. She'd even sometimes hide a smile when my friends were teasing me. It felt good, being accepted and even cheered on by everyone. The last period of the day was study hall. I was working on my physics homework when I suddenly felt someone staring at me. I looked up and saw Chloe, her chin resting in her hand, her head tilted as she stared at me. Her gaze was intense, full of a soft, focused adoration. The sunlight slanted in through the window, giving her a soft glow. Her long eyelashes cast faint shadows on her cheeks. She looked like a painting. Her stare made my heart beat a little faster. "What?" I mouthed silently. She snapped out of it, a blush spreading across her cheeks as she quickly looked down, pretending to read her book. But her ears were bright red. I couldn't help but smile. I tore off a piece of paper and scribbled, "Staring costs extra, girlfriend." I balled it up and tossed it perfectly onto her desk. She jumped, shot me a glare, then discreetly unfolded the note. After she read it, her face got even redder. She quickly scribbled a reply on the back, balled it up, and tossed it back. I caught it and unfolded it. Her neat handwriting said, "How much? Can I get an IOU?" She'd drawn a little winking face next to it. My heart warmed. I wrote back, "An IOU is fine, but the interest is high. It compounds. I'm worried you won't be able to pay me back." She quickly sent back another note. "How do I pay?" I looked at her question, a wicked smile spreading across my face as I wrote back one word, "Kisses." I tossed it back to her. This time, after she read the note, she turned as red as a cooked lobster, from her face all the way down her neck. She whipped her head around and glared at me, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. "Jerk," she mouthed silently. I just winked at her, a picture of innocence. She huffed and turned away, carefully folding the note and tucking it deep inside her pencil case. Then she buried her burning face in her arms on the desk. All I could see was the tip of one of her very red, very cute ears. I looked at her, and my heart felt like it had been tickled by a feather. My Chloe, how could she be so cute? The final bell rang, but Chloe didn't move from her spot on the desk. I packed my bag and walked over to her desk, gently tapping her on the arm. "Hey, school's out." She slowly lifted her head, her face still flushed, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Oh." She started to pack her bag very, very slowly. I knew she was still embarrassed about the note, so I waited patiently for her to finish. When she was finally ready, we walked out of the classroom together. We'd just gotten to the main entrance when we were stopped by an unwelcome visitor. It was Mark, the captain of the football team from the class next door. He was a big guy, and I'd heard he had a thing for Chloe. Mark was holding a pink envelope, looking nervous as he stared at Chloe. "Chloe, this is for you," he said, holding the letter out to her. Chloe froze, staring at what was obviously a love letter, then instinctively looked at me. My expression immediately turned to ice. A fierce wave of possessiveness and annoyance washed over me. How dare he try to move in on my girlfriend? I stepped in front of Chloe, my eyes calm, but my voice cold as I looked at Mark. "Sorry, she's taken." Mark clearly hadn't expected me to step in. His face fell, and he looked at me defiantly. "Ethan, who are you to decide for her?" Before I could answer, Chloe stepped out from behind me, took my arm, and said in a clear, firm voice, "He doesn't have to decide for me. I'm already his." Her words hit me like a bolt of lightning. Not only was Mark stunned, but I was so surprised I turned to look at her. She was holding my arm tightly. Her cheeks were still a little red, but her gaze was steady and unwavering as she looked at Mark. It was a clear declaration of ownership. My heart felt like it had been struck, and then I was overwhelmed with a huge wave of joy and satisfaction. My Chloe was defending me. She was telling everyone that I was hers. That feeling was better than any love song. Mark's face fell. He looked at Chloe's hand on my arm, then back at me, and finally, dejectedly, he took back the letter and walked away without a word. After Mark was gone, Chloe finally let out a breath, let go of my arm, and patted her chest. That was so scary. I turned to face her, my eyes intense. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice low and full of suppressed excitement. She froze for a second, then realized what she'd said. Her face turned bright red, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't say anything. "I heard you," I said, taking a step closer and trapping her between me and a pillar. "You said you were mine." Her back was against the cool stone of the pillar, and I was in front of her. She had nowhere to go. Her cheeks were as red as a sunset, her eyes shining with a mixture of shyness and a little bit of pride. "I just said that to make him go away," she mumbled, but her voice had no conviction. "I don't care," I said, leaning down to press my forehead against hers, our breath mingling. "You said it. No takebacks. Chloe, you admitted it. You're mine. This life and the next. You're not getting out of it." My voice was bossy, but my eyes were full of a tenderness so deep you could drown in it. She looked at my face, so close to hers, and her breath hitched. Her long lashes fluttered, and then she slowly closed her eyes. It was a silent invitation. My heart hammered in my chest. I looked at her lips, so close, so pink, so perfectly kissable. I couldn't resist any longer. I leaned down and gently kissed her. It wasn't like her quick peck the night before. This was a real kiss, a kiss that was both a confirmation and a claim. It was soft and warm, and she tasted of vanilla and strawberry lip balm. It was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted, and it was intoxicating. Her body went rigid for a second, then she slowly relaxed into me, her arms unconsciously wrapping around my waist. She responded shyly, awkwardly. Everything else faded away. There was only the sound of our frantic heartbeats, the feeling of our shared breath. The kiss wasn't long, but it was one I would never forget. When I slowly pulled away, her eyes were still closed, her cheeks were flushed, and her lips were slightly swollen and glistening. She looked like a delicate flower after a spring rain. She slowly opened her eyes, her gaze hazy with a mixture of passion and embarrassment. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice soft and breathy. "Yeah," I answered, my thumb gently brushing against her swollen lips, a feeling of deep satisfaction washing over me. "That's the interest," I said, my voice hoarse. She froze for a second, then realized I was referring to my kisses joke from the note. Her face got even redder, and she buried her face in my chest, mumbling, "Jerk." I smiled and held her tighter, enjoying the feeling of her leaning against me so trustingly. My heart was filled to the brim with a feeling I could only call happiness. I knew that from that moment on, our relationship had truly entered a new phase. It was a phase sweetened by our first real kiss and solidified by our mutual commitment. The setting sun stretched our shadows long, so they were intertwined, inseparable. It felt like a promise that no matter what the future held, we would face it together. My Chloe, this life, I was never, ever letting her go. That kiss by the school entrance was like an invisible brand, marking our relationship as officially and exclusively ours. On the walk home, Chloe kept her head down, the blush on her cheeks lingering. We held hands, our palms a little sweaty, but neither of us let go. The air between us was sweet and a little awkwardly charged. After all, it had been our first real kiss. She started, her voice a tiny whisper. "Yeah," I said, glancing at her. Even her ears were red. "That was an accident," she said, her eyes darting away as she tried to save face. "Don't get any ideas." I looked at her, so obviously lying, and couldn't resist teasing her. "Oh, an accident," I said, stopping and pulling her in front of me. I looked down into her shining eyes. "So, should we try for a non-accident?" Her eyes went wide like a startled deer's. She slapped her hand over her mouth and mumbled a muffled, "No." I laughed at her adorable panic and stopped teasing her, taking her hand again. "Okay, whatever you say," I said, my voice full of affection. She finally relaxed, lowering her hand and sneaking a glance at me, a sweet little smile playing on her lips. When we got to her door, the atmosphere was different than it had ever been. It was filled with a new reluctance to part, the sweet clinginess of a new relationship. "I should go in," she said, standing at her door, but making no move to get her keys, twisting the strap of her bag instead. "Yeah," I nodded, but I didn't let go of her hand. We just stood there for a minute, holding hands. The dim hallway light created an intimate atmosphere. "Tomorrow," she said, her eyes shining. "Can I have chocolate milk again?" "Of course," I said, smiling and squeezing her fingers. "Girlfriend privileges are permanent." She blushed again. "Who cares about that?" she mumbled. "I do," I said, my voice serious. "I care enough to buy it for you for the rest of our lives." Her heart seemed to skip a beat. She blinked, her long lashes fluttering like a butterfly's wings. "You're so cheesy," she said, looking down to hide her smile. After a moment, as if she'd made a decision, she quickly stood on her tiptoes and gave me a light, quick kiss on the lips. It was there and gone in an instant. It was much softer than our last kiss, but just as sweet. "That's your reward," she whispered, her face red, then quickly turned, unlocked her door, and said, "See you tomorrow." The door slammed shut. I stood there, my fingers gently touching my lips, where I could still feel the ghost of her soft, strawberry-scented kiss. My heart felt like it was overflowing with honey, so sweet it almost hurt. My Chloe was getting bolder. It was amazing. From that day on, our life at school felt like we were living in a dream. The morning chocolate milk became our ritual. Holding hands on the way to and from school became our routine. The knowing glances between classes, the shared snacks at lunch, the secret notes passed during study hall, every little thing was filled with the sickeningly sweet scent of new love. Josh and my other friends went from teasing us constantly to just accepting it. They even started covering for us when a teacher would come around unexpectedly. Chloe also slowly grew into her role as Ethan's girlfriend, becoming more natural and relaxed around me. She'd straighten my collar without thinking, wait on the sidelines with a water bottle and towel when I had basketball practice, and when I was stuck on a homework problem, she'd lean over, poke me in the forehead with her pen, call me an idiot, and then patiently explain it to me. Her grades were a little worse than mine, especially in math. So, studying together on the weekends became our new form of a secret date. Of course, it was with our parents' full knowledge and approval. After all, we were just helping each other study. It was another Saturday afternoon. The warm sunlight streamed into my room. We sat side by side at my desk, our textbooks and notebooks spread out before us. She was chewing on the end of her pen, her brow furrowed in concentration as she stared at a functions problem. "This is so hard," she groaned, slumping onto the desk. She turned her head to look at me. "Ethan, how do you do this?" I put down my physics book and leaned over to look at her paper. It was a tough problem, a combination of trigonometry and geometry. "You need to add a line here," I said, taking a pencil and drawing a faint line on her diagram. "Then you can use the cosine rule on this angle." I explained it carefully, and she leaned in close, her eyes fixed on the paper as she asked questions. A strand of her hair brushed against my cheek, and it smelled like fresh shampoo. When I finished, she still looked a little confused. Still don't get it? I asked. She nodded, embarrassed, a silent plea for help in her eyes. Okay, I'll explain it again, slower this time. I patiently went through it again, this time using a simpler method. As I explained, her eyes started to light up. Oh, I get it, she said, sitting up straight and grabbing her pen. So that's how it works. Seeing her happy, triumphant expression filled me with a sense of satisfaction. When she was concentrating, she would unconsciously purse her lips, her long lashes casting soft shadows on her cheeks. The sunlight on her focused face was soft and beautiful. I found myself staring, lost in the moment. It wasn't until she finished the problem and proudly pushed her paper toward me that I snapped out of it. Look, I did it. Yeah, that's great, I said, smiling and ruffling her hair. She closed her eyes in enjoyment, like a happy kitten. Then, as if she'd remembered something, she pulled a small, beautifully wrapped box out of her bag and handed it to me. This is for you. I froze for a second, then took the box. What's this? A reward, she said, her cheeks a little pink, her eyes sparkling. For always helping me with my homework. I opened the box. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a small basketball charm. Next to the charm were two tiny engraved letters, E and C, Ethan and Chloe. My heart felt like it had been gently struck, and a warm feeling spread through me. When did you get this? I asked, picking up the bracelet and rubbing the small basketball charm between my fingers. Just the other day, she said, looking down, a little embarrassed. I saw you playing basketball, and you seemed to really like it. So I picked this one. Do you not like it? I love it, I said without hesitation, handing it to her. Put it on for me. She looked up, her eyes shining, and carefully fastened the bracelet around my left wrist. The silver chain looked good against my skin, and the little basketball charm glinted in the light. It looks great, I said, admiring it on my wrist. Then I looked at her, my voice soft. Thank you, girlfriend. She blushed and smiled, clearly pleased. Don't ever take it off, she ordered softly, a playful pout on her lips. Okay, I promise solemnly. Never. The sun, the desk, the two of us sitting side by side, each wearing a symbol of the other's affection. The warmth and peace of that moment were everything I had been longing for since I came back. After we finished our homework, we leaned against my headboard, relaxing. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through the secret pictures we'd taken together. There were pictures of us holding hands in the school garden, sharing cake at the dessert shop, of her asleep on my shoulder. Each one was a small snapshot of our new relationship. Ethan, she said softly, still looking at the pictures. Sometimes this feels like a dream. Yeah, I said, turning to look at her. We fought for so many years, she said, looking up at me, her eyes a little distant. How did we suddenly end up like this? Her question made my heart clench. I knew she was talking about how much I'd changed since I came back. The abrupt shift from frenemy to devoted boyfriend. I took her hand, lacing my fingers with hers, feeling her warmth. Because, I said slowly, looking into her clear eyes, I almost lost you. She stared at me, confused. Lost me? When? I realized I'd almost let it slip again and quickly backtracked. In my nightmare. I squeezed her hand, my voice laced with a genuine fear she couldn't have understood. In the dream, I lost you, and I couldn't find you anywhere. When I woke up, I realized I couldn't keep going like that. I couldn't wait until I really lost you to finally regret it. My explanation was a half-truth, but it was convincing enough. Chloe looked at me, her own eyes getting a little misty. She squeezed my hand back and nodded firmly. You won't, she said, her voice firm. You won't ever lose me. Ethan, I think I like you more than I even realized. Her confession was so direct and sincere, it was like a stone dropped into a still lake, sending ripples all the way through me. I looked at her tear-filled eyes and her serious expression, and my heart completely melted. I leaned down and gently kissed her forehead. Me too, I whispered in her ear. Chloe, I love you. Not like love. A deep, profound love that had crossed life and death, time and space. A love that had been lost and found again. The word love seemed to shake her. She trembled slightly, then hugged me tightly. She buried her face in my chest and mumbled, me too. Her voice was quiet, but I heard it perfectly. We held each other in the afternoon sun, quietly feeling the beat of each other's hearts. We didn't need any more words. The peace and happiness of that moment were worth more than 1,000 words. That evening, I walked her home. We lingered at her door, reluctant to say goodbye. See you tomorrow, she said, her eyes shining like they were full of stars. See you tomorrow, I said, leaning down to give her a soft kiss. This time, she didn't pull away. She tilted her head up and shyly kissed me back. The The cool evening breeze couldn't touch the warmth between us. I watched her go inside and close the door before I finally turned to leave. The bracelet on my wrist glinted in the setting sun, just like my heart, which was filled with light and hope because of her. On the way home, I looked at the busy streets, the bustling crowds. Nothing looked different than it had before, but everything was completely different, because now I had her, the girl I'd fought with for more than a decade, the childhood friend I'd tragically lost, the girl who fought me for my hoodie, who smelled like vanilla, who pretended to be lost so she could sneak into my room, the girl I had clumsily, desperately, won back. This life, I wouldn't let any accident tear us apart. I would hold her hand tightly through every season, through every ordinary day, and walk toward the long, happy future we were supposed to have. When I got home, my parents were watching TV in the living room. My mom noticed the new bracelet on my wrist. "When did you get that, Ethan?" she asked. I held up my wrist, looking at the little basketball charm and the E and C engraving, a smile I couldn't contain spreading across my face. "Chloe gave it to me." My voice was full of a pride and happiness I didn't even try to hide. My parents exchanged a knowing smile. "That Chloe is such a sweet girl," my mom said with a smile. My dad nodded in agreement. "As long as you two are happy, we're happy." I looked at my parents' happy smiles, and my heart filled with warmth and gratitude. I was so grateful that fate had given me a second chance, and I was so grateful that she was willing to meet me halfway. Back in my room, I sat down at my desk and took out my journal. I'd started keeping a journal after I came back, a place to record every precious moment with her. I turned to a new page and started to write. October 12th, Sunny. She gave me a bracelet with our initials on it. She said she likes me more than she thought she did. I told her I love her. This time, our story won't end in regret. Ethan and Chloe. From high school to our wedding day. From now until we're old and gray. This life, the next, forever and always. It's a done deal. I closed the journal and looked out the window. The night sky was full of stars, just like her eyes when she looked at me, full of light and love. My Chloe, I'm so lucky I get to love you in this life.